What is your concept of subtraction? I guess before you can answer that question, you need to know what a concept is. Now, a formal search on the word concept will often reveal the word idea, and in turn, the word idea is often described as being a mental image. In fact, the word idea comes from the Greek idein, which simply means to see. So you could say that a concept is a mental image of an idea. So with that in mind, what is your concept of subtraction? Now, I've asked hundreds, if not thousands of elementary teachers, primary teachers, that exact question. And unfortunately, all too often, they simply say that my concept is this. Many mathematics programs introduce symbols way too early as a way of representing certain concepts. And that limits a student's ability to understand the concept and what the symbol truly represents. In this episode, I'm going to show you a unique way of teaching concepts that will help students develop a deep understanding of mathematics. Now, we know from the science of learning, we learn new ideas by connecting the new idea to something we already know. Take, for example, the skill of riding a jet ski. When you look at a jet ski for the first time, you could be forgiven for thinking it has a handlebar, it has grips, much like a bicycle that I've ridden before. You might also be thinking maybe I can steer this jet ski by leaning it side to side, much like I do a bicycle. Now, the tool we use to connect the new idea to the existing idea is our language. And that language could be a spoken language, or it could be just the language that I'm thinking in my mind. Now, with this knowledge, we like to start teaching concepts using the student's own language. Now, let's look again at our example of subtraction, the concept of subtraction. Subtraction is rich in language that students already know even before they come to school. For example, if they had 3 apples and they eat one, they would know there will no longer be 3 apples. And that's because the word eat suggests subtraction. And there's other words too. The children could lose their toys. They could break eggs. The birds could fly away, the frogs could jump away, the fish can swim away. There are so many words that suggest subtraction that the children already know, so we need to start there. At the same time, you could be using everyday materials to act out these subtraction situations. There's nothing wrong with using real apples at home. So the first stage of development in teaching concepts is to draw from the student's own experiences using everyday language and everyday materials. And this foundational stage is pictured here on the base of this teaching model for concepts. In the classroom, teachers can use storybooks to introduce concepts that use everyday language. Here is a book called 10 Happy Hens that I wrote a few years ago. Let's just read a couple of pages. 10 happy hens were waiting by the gate. 2 ran out, and then there were 8. 10 happy hens were digging by the door. 6 ran out, and then there were 4. After sharing stories like that, we want students to act out each scene using hands-on materials. A tens frame with some counters like this are ideal for acting out each subtraction situation. Do you remember that first spread? 10 happy hens were waiting by the gate, 2 ran out, then there were 8. Let's model that or act that out. 10 happy hens are waiting by the gate, 2 ran out, then there were 8. So we remove the counters from the tens frame, and what is left is the total. It's important to note that when we start acting out subtraction using classroom materials, we start to narrow the language that suggests subtraction. These counters won't run away. They won't fly away. They won't swim away. I'm not going to break them. I'm not going to lose them. And I'm certainly not going to eat them. So you just keep in mind that when we do the right thing and have the students act out using hands-on materials, we inadvertently narrow the language the students use and need to learn the new concept. You can see this happening as we move up the triangle that shows our model for teaching concepts. The language associated with the classroom materials gets narrowed to remove or take away or possibly just cover up. In the next stage of development, we're going to start introducing mathematical words to replace the words that we use with classroom materials. So instead of saying take away, we might say subtract, or we might even say that other word which we associate with subtraction. Yes, I'm talking about minus. I mean, think about the word minus. When do you ever use the word minus outside of mathematics? It's really only used to model or explain mathematical situations, like possibly even -3 degrees. So don't be in a hurry to introduce that word minus. It really doesn't hold much meaning. In fact, I've asked teachers many a time, draw me a picture of minus. And unfortunately, their only mental image is the symbol. So as we move towards the apex of our model for teaching concepts, the language we use becomes narrow or more narrow and certainly more abstract. At the same time, the materials we use also becomes more abstract, less hands-on, and now we can start using pictures and diagrams where the students could actually cross out or erase images to model the situation of subtraction. And finally, at the apex of our model, we introduce the symbol. And the symbol is the ultimate abbreviation for all the language and the materials we've used to introduce and teach the concept. If you look along the left side of the model, you might recognize the CPA approach, concrete, pictorial to abstract. And the right side integrates our language stages into the model. And I've included a link to this graphic in the episode notes. Now this is what I want you to do. 1, don't race to introduce young students to concepts using symbols. Instead, leverage what they already know, their experiences, their language, and their everyday materials to model and to discuss the concept. And 2, give them many experiences with hands-on materials and pictures or diagrams. But be aware, as you introduce those things, you are going to narrow the language they use to associate and to represent subtraction. Now, a word wall could be a useful tool for helping them develop and build up all the language associated for the concept. For example, with subtraction, your word wall might look like this. And finally, if you've seen value in today's episode, leave a thumbs up or a helpful comment and subscribe today so you never miss another learning opportunity with me. See you next time.